Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a deck profile for the brand new, for one of the first EX Pokemon that was actually revealed last night, and that's going to be Arcanine EX, and this is actually going to be a Terrastall version of the EX mechanic. So we got our first look at the EX mechanics. We got Koraidon, Miraidon EX fully revealed, along with some other EXs, including Ampharos EX, Mimikyu EX, Cyclizar EX, and the Arcanine EX. And the reason I wanted to do my first deck profile for EX Pokemon on Arcanine is because, the other EXs aren't that great. It's honestly kind of surprising. We haven't really seen any really good EX Pokemon. This is like, I think, the best one. It's kind of sad that this is better than the two legendaries, but Miraidon doesn't have enough tools to doesn't really have enough lightning attacker tools or lightning Pokemon to use yet, and Koraidon, the fighting one, is just generally pretty weak, although I do have a couple ideas of how I could try and make that one work. But we're going to start off with the Arcanine because it's the best one, and it also shows off the cool new half mechanic that they didn't reveal in a big way, but they did kind of just give to us, and that is going to be the Terrastall mechanic. I don't know if you can see this, but the Arcanine has the crystal hat right up there, as well as he looks at a little crystal on his paw and on his head right there. And that's because he is actually a Terrastall Pokemon. And the Terrastall Pokemon EX, not only do they feature the special crystal logo, you can't really see that barely at all on my card, but if you go and look at the Poke Beach article and zoom in on the card, you'll actually be able to see the crystal version of the EX logo a little bit better there. Then it does have this little text box right here, right at the top. You probably can't read that, but this one, it says Terrastall, and this one says this Pokemon doesn't take any damage from attacks on the bench. And I think a lot of people's initial reaction to this was that is pretty weak, especially for an entire mechanic that is featured in the actual video game. Like in Sword and Shield, we got the Gigantamax and Dynamax mechanics, and those were in their entire own cards. This is kind of just like a thing that's just kind of put on the card, and not only is it just put on the card, but it's a pretty weak effect. Bench Barrier is good, but it's not that good, especially on this high HP Pokemon. When you really care about Bench Barrier is for the weaker Pokemon. This only does it to itself. This Pokemon doesn't take any damage from attacks when on the bench. And people immediately started speculating that this isn't the last thing we're going to see from this Terrastall mechanic. People are speculating that we're going to see a Psychic type version, maybe a Psychic type Ampharos that has a different Terrastall power here and also got Psychic Energy to attack with. And that will be more true to how the video game is. But I really like how they're, if this is not the only effect we're getting, as these Terrastall rulebox effects, I'm really excited to see what they do with those because the possibilities are almost endless. But today we're looking at the Arcanine EX. I almost said V-Star EX. We're doing EXs now. And this one does have 2 attacks. It has the Raging Claw for 2 fire energies. Deals a nice 30 damage and 10 more damage for each damage card on its Pokemon, which is a pretty decent attack when we can increase that damage with the Rapidash. Then we have Bright Flame, which does 250 for triple fire energy, and you discard 2 energies from this Pokemon. And both attacks are really, really solid. Bright Flame, which is a single Rapidash increasingness buff. Bright Flame, which is a single Rapidash buff, will be able to do 280, which is going to be seemingly, considering the 280 HP on this Stage 1 EX, will be the benchmark for the Stage 1 EXs and will definitely knock out those basic EXs. But if you have even more Rapidashes, you could even get up to those Stage 2 EXs, which are up all the way up to at the 330 mark. And so two pretty decent attacks. Both of them hit good numbers, like Raging Claw. Say an Ampharos hits you for 240 is how much damage that EX does. Say that Ampharos hits you for 240, now you're just at 270, and then in just 2 Rapidash modifications, and you're hitting the 330 just to knock them out right back. Magnezone, kind of similar. If they hit for 220, then you do 250. They also do 30 damage to themselves, so then that's pseudo increasing your own damage by 30. So you're up to 280, and then just a couple more Rapidash buffs will get you to that knockout. So I think this Arcanine has a lot of potential to be dealing with those Stage 2 Pokemon EX fairly well as those basic and Stage 1s. And if this card honestly just had a different Terrastall effect, I think this card would be extremely good. but it doesn't. But nonetheless, we're still going to be looking at it today, and we're going to be playing 4 copies of it in our deck, 4 copies of the Arcanine EX. It does also have a 3 retreat cost, which is kind of annoying to deal with, but we can get by. Then we have 4 copies of Growlithe, and this is the new Growlithe, featuring the new kind of design that they're going with for the cards. It's a very weird design. It looks like both old and new at the exact same time. This Growlithe does 90 HP, which is really relevant when Sableye in the format. Sableye can, if this guy had 60 HP, Sableye could just come in and KO 2 of your Growlithe, and that'll be bad. But because Growlithe has 90 HP, it means that Sableye actually can only knock out 1 of these at a time, which is going to be really nice for you. Then we also do have a couple attacks. Stoke here, search deck for 2 fire energy cards attached to this Pokemon. Actually not that bad, especially when post-rotations, I forgot to mention, this is going to be a post-rotation list. Especially when post-rotation, things are not going to be as consistent. We lose Quick Ball, we lose Marnie. There's not as many good draw supporters in the format, as well as not very many good search cards. So it's not uncommon. I don't feel like it's not going to be uncommon for decks to whiff attacks. So if you can use this Stoke on turn 1 going second and your opponent whiffs a knockout on it, then you're going to be in a great spot because you just essentially got 2 fire energies and play for free. They also have the Fire Claw, which for triple fire deals 70 and actually isn't not that bad because 70 seems like it will be KOing most other evolving Pokemon that will want to evolve into their own big 280 or even 330 EX Pokemon. Now, going with that Rapidash I was talking about, this is actually a card that we currently have out right now. With that Heat Boost ability, it says once during turn you can discard a fire energy card from your hand, and then during that turn, your fire Pokemon's attacks deal 30 more damage. So, like I mentioned, this will buff your Arcanine's second attack all the way up to that 280. It'll buff the Rage Claw, I think that's what that was called. Anyway, the first attack on Arcanine to take knockouts from that. So really all-around good card, and of course we need to evolve those into, or we actually need to evolve the Rapidash, so we're playing the 4 copies of Ponyta. This deck, if they do print a Rapidash EX, this deck only gets better, which is pretty cool. We have a couple Sport Pokemon, one copy of Radiant Greninja, because we do want to get those energy to the discard pile because of our Magma Basin, which is how we're going to be accelerating to our Pokemon, is with that Magma Basin, and Radiant Greninja draws cards, and drawing cards is extremely welcome. When we lose Crobat, we don't have a great basic Pokemon that draws cards anymore, and Radiant Greninja is the best one that can actually do that. Not only does it draw cards, but also, like I mentioned, we want cards in discard piles that we can use with our Magma Basin and things like that. Rapidash is a little bit sometimes too much to establish on those early turns to get those energies in discard piles, so Radiant Greninja can do that pretty nicely. Then we have one copy of Lumineon V, which is going to be a staple, I think, in most lists post-rotation at least, because we lose Crobat and decks get less consistent because we lose Ball Search, so Lumineon is going to be really welcome in a lot of decks to help us boost that consistency of our decks just a little bit. And with supporters, speaking of consistency, we're having 4 Research and then 4 Judge. And Judge, I think, is actually the second best draw supporter now that Marnie is rotating. Each player, and it's a very similar effect to Marnie, each player shovels their hand to their deck and draws 4 cards. And with a deck, with the Arcanine, that actually needs 2 turn attachments to actually get it up and attacking. If you just attach twice to an Arcanine and then use 1 Heat Boost, you're hitting 60 damage, which actually isn't bad for one of killing these evolving Pokemon. So it's not that hard to get a turn 2 couple prizes with that raging, the Rage attack on the Arcanine boosted by a Rapidash. So if you can do that, Judge, in combination with that little 60 damage poke, that can kind of put you in a good spot sometimes. Because taking a prize card on turn 2, like I mentioned, some decks might be a little bit more or less consistent because you lose Ball Search and draw supporters. So not only do you get access to that early aggression sometimes, but Judge can also make your opponent brick as well, because we don't, like I mentioned, we don't have as many consistency cards. So they potentially have less consistency in their deck that will be able to let them draw out of Judge. Then 2 copies of Boss's Orders finally to round out our supporters, and Boss is just a good card. We got Research and Boss are going to be in format because they get reprinted in Brilliant Stars, and Research is also getting a reprint in the Scarlet and Violet base set. Going into our items, we have more of the same kind of consistency, because I think consistency, at least for the early formats, consistency is always going to be king, at least. So having 4 copies of Ultra Ball, as well as 4 copies of Battle VIP Pass, so we can get out all the Greninjas and the Ponytas on turn 1. This is going to help us with that. Also, 3 copies of Trekking Shoes, And just another item card that's going to help with our consistency of our deck. 3 copies of Energy Retrieval, because we're pretty aggressively discarding energies with our own attack. The Bright Flame, the second attack, that does discard 2 energies. Rapidashes, that force you to discard energies to get that damage buff. Or, oh my gosh, I said damage buff. And then, of course, concealed cards as well. So having ways to get those back, along with the Magma Basin, is going to be really, really welcome. More consistency, 2 copies of Capturing Aroma, which is a extremely bad card in a vacuum. But when we lose Quick Ball, it's actually not that bad anymore. You flip a coin. If it's heads, you get to search your deck for an evolution. If it's tails, you get to search your deck for a basic. And both basics and evolutions are extremely important in our deck because we want to get our Ponytas, which are basics, and we want to get out our Arcanine and our Rapidash, which are evolutions. So Capturing Aroma, if we get a little lucky, sometimes we can get the exact Pokemon we're going to need. Then we have 2 copies of Switch, because we want to be able to switch around our Pokemon for our Magma Basins. Speaking of Magma Basin, we have 4 copies of Magma Basin in the list, because that is our main energy acceleration in the deck. Welder decks back in the day played 4 Welders. We're playing 4 Magma Basin. Kind of the same idea here. And then we have our basic fire energies. We're going to be having the 10 basic fire energies in the deck. And yeah, that's going to be the Arcanine deck. I think, yeah, like I said before, a lot of the EXs that were revealed yesterday or last night were pretty lagging. Not many of them were actually that great. So it'll be interesting to see how the EXs develop as a mechanic. If there's going to be any actually decent ones, or if this is where we're going to be stuck with these like semi-mediocre cards, and we're going to have to play engines like this with 4 judge and 4 research and like 4 of every single card, because we just need to be able to set up. And honestly, I'm not a greatest fan of like Arceus Barrel. I wasn't the biggest fan of, so this is the kind of deck that we're going to be having for a little bit while. I don't know, I might get kind of bored, but let's see. EXs have a lot of potential, and the game designers know how to make a good game. It's been proven before, so we'll see how it all pans out. I have confidence that Pokemon will be able to make the right decision with their game. And yeah, that's going to do it for the video, guys. If you guys liked it, don't forget to leave a like. I'll see you guys in the next one.